So,
Hi.
World of Instagram. So we're here today. I'm Ruth Claxton, artist maker at Eastside Projects, and I'm here with Emii Alrai,
Hi.
artist extraordinaire, and we're just going to kind of introduce the mammoth artwork that we've just made, the Courtship of Giants, and kind of just walk you through so you can get a sense of what will be here if you come and visit the gallery and come and see the show and kind of experience it for yourself. So, do you want to just start by maybe you could just introduce where it's the idea, where's Courtship of Giants come
from? Welcome to the maze that we've built with an amazing team. Thank you very much to the team for helping. The Courtship of Giants kind of stemmed from a book that I came across in a charity shop called Medieval Hunting Scenes, which is a book by a French, he was really into hunting traps, and he did all these drawings of medieval hunting scenes, and they were really interesting because the way that the slats or the way that the traps worked for the animals really felt like a kind of maze. And I started thinking from there about this idea of entrapment and capture and how that kind of related to museology as well, because a lot of my practice deals with ideas of how objects in Western museums that are not from the West have been collected, how those kind of objects exist in the framework of museums within their architecture, how museums build dioramas and situate history that has often been curated by white people, and this kind of white Western history on objects that don't originate from here. And I was thinking about the ways in which we could kind of play with this idea of a diorama, kind of making something that is almost a false history of entrapment of these objects that are kind of littered within the museum. And I'm really into kind of creating worlds or landscapes or narratives, which is why we have created a massive maze. So you can kind of really go into this kind of world of, I guess a kind of lore in a sense. And the kind of idea of giants as well, thinking about how giants in mythology have always been these creatures that have been hunted to either killed to get treasure or to open up these different pathways of different worlds, but also how giants are also very visible to us in the form of objects in museums. So the big Lamassu that's in the British Museum, these huge facades that then come into museums in the West and are solidified there, which are gigantic and enormous, and the feeling of being situated within a history that you get in a museum. I kind of wanted to play with that a little bit with this show too. And I guess ideas of courtship, the way you enter into a space to enter into a relationship with it, and that kind of played into the title a little bit too.
Cool, brilliant. So should we take people around?
Yes, sure. Okay, so welcome to the maze.
So we've made this over the past 4 weeks.
Yes. Yes.
So maybe just thought it might be interesting for people to kind of understand a bit about the materiality and kind of how you approach materials.
So I'm really into materials that are very broken or are residues of something. So a lot of this was used cardboard that we managed to get a lot of from cardboard recycling place, and it's kind of patinated with plaster and sand, and then bits of hessian, bits of hay, and these kind of stitches which kind of look like sutures. So I'm really interested in the materiality specifically as a texture, and how within textures you can almost find these kind of archaeological memories, or they kind of relate to these imagined geographies of places. So this feels very medieval and very cob-like, but also could somehow be reminiscent of the way we've digested how maybe Iraq specifically, which is where my family heritage is from, is portrayed in the Western world, through news, through games like Call of Duty, this idea of sand, this idea of rubble, this idea of these spaces which are destroyed, and how through the use of materials like plaster and sand, which are materials that you use every day to build houses in where we are always, but when you use them in a specific way, they sort of bring out these different memories, or situate you in I guess an imagined world where you can sort of pick reference points. So I kind of wanted to kind of make this whole maze as something that like was very like textural and lots of things to look at.
And then I guess the weave also kind of
The
comes
weave,
in.
yes. So I did a thank you to the Arts Council as well. Thank you very much. So I did a weaving workshop because I was looking at those hunting traps, and they kind of use traditionally like willow weaving and like kind of larger bits of hazel to sort of create these fences. And I did a weaving workshop up in Northumberland with Sylvan Skills, a lovely woman called Ruth Thompson, where I learned how to do some like basketry and also like just weaving, and I kind of wanted to replicate that through cardboard, so not using those materials but trying to sort of emulate them in a way where they might look like these kind of woven slats that would have been really quickly like put up like in the medieval times to like quickly build these like ring fences when you're hunting, but also just to kind of add a bit more texture and to develop my practice a little bit as well, because normally I've used the kind of plaster cladding to kind of create like an environment, but this is sort of like an upgrade, I guess. And then also with like the plaster textures, like kind of having them a bit more splatty and like almost maybe reminiscent of like abattoirs and like I guess like bloodshed.
Because this is like on a pretty different scale to
yes,
previous work.
definitely. Like I feel I've always made quite big sculptures, but this is insanely big. Very, very large. So
how does it feel now you're like in it? Now you've made this thing, because it's been interesting working with you. Because whenever I've tried to ask you about a measurement,
yes,
you've always related it to your own body.
Oh really?
In terms of scale, yeah. I don't think you've ever said 25 centimeters. You've always gone like about looked at yourself and gone about that long.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, I just want now you're like you're in this world. You thought,
yeah,
I suppose. I just wondered how that actually feels.
It feels quite wild, I'm not gonna lie. Like it feels quite overwhelming also for it to be finished and to be situated in it, but it does feel quite gargantuan, which is really nice. I'm also just terrible at precision, like I'm not very good at maths, and I'm quite into like the kind of chaos of like, or like also the trust of like trusting your own body to like measure things, I guess. Like it's quite nice, as we might not have had that kind of like really precise things. And I think with the nature of the work, because it's so chaotic, to have something that's very like strict seems very like museological, or like very like, I don't know, rigid, so kind of playing with that. But yeah, it feels big and it feels like you can sort of get lost in it.
Yeah.
Shall we go through
let's
the
do it.
maze? So these are some of the sculptures that are in the maze, which are all made out of polystyrene, which I'm very aware is very terrible for the environment, but they all get reused as like different iterations for like from previous shows, but also like for upcoming ones. But yeah, I kind of wanted to make these like forms that were kind of anthropomorphic, that could like be kind of related to the body, but could also be like kind of animal-like, and like this idea of like the hunt. Also thinking about like museum armatures, how they also like operate in a way where they entrap and ensnare objects of the past in museums, and how we look at these fragments that have been like put to us like in eye height, like in a very violent way, like as a way to be like, this is how you like confront history, but then thinking about the materiality of metal specifically as well, like its own history of like when metal was started to be mined and like started to be used, like the kind of first implements were like weaponry. So like thinking about these relationships between metal like as an armature, but also as like a weapon as well. So I guess all this kind of intricacies within the practice too, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, then the arrows, because this is a violent show for some reason.
Yeah, because the arrows kind of feature across almost all the objects. They're kind of wounded, they're sort of caught and captured, and all of them are wounded, aren't they?
There's only one that isn't, but it's a broken one, so it's also wounded in a way. I don't know. During this process as well, like I've been having some mentoring with the French archaeologist Laurent Olivier, and he was talking about how these arrows are actually very like linked to like, or they're a very like European form of arrow specifically, and I hadn't really thought about that. I just sort of wanted to make arrows that look like the arrow that when we think about like Cupid, or we think about like hunting or archery, like this very like specific like directional piece or like bit of metal. And then when he kind of like spoke about that being like this European style, and I was like, oh my god, wow, cool, thanks. Like, that's interesting.
But there's something nice in there as well about, you know, the reference you just used there is Cupid.
Yeah.
So the arrow is this kind of object that's both about like capturing for love,
Yes.
you know, one, and also killing.
Exactly.
You know, it's got this kind of duality to it, I suppose.
Definitely. And also just like arrows themselves are like very romanticized, like their whole I guess the pre-Raphaelites were really interesting in the way that they kind of like reimagined like the medieval and like the kind of like distant past from that point when they were around, which I think is like late 1800s. I'm not going to do it because I don't know. I'm not good with math. 1800s, yeah. Anyway, they kind of have a lot of these paintings where you see like these bodies folded over double, like over horse, like these knights that are kind of punctured with the arrow, like San Sebastian, like how that kind of romanticism of like being shot with an arrow is very beautiful. And then also like, the lexicon that's attached to like arrows as well. So like a crossbow arrow is called a quarrel, and a quarrel is like a very romanticized and very poetic way of like describing a dispute. But then also what arrows sit in, like the kind of pouches that they sit in, sheaths, are called quivers, which is also like a very interesting word for something that is very violent, because I feel like a quiver can also be a very sexualized term. It can be very like it's very like anticipatory. So there's all this kind of like poetics that are wrapped up in like the world of arrows, which I found really interesting in relationship to, I guess, like the wider like world of this exhibition. Yeah, and with the title as well, like the Courtship of Giants, like to court something by wounding it and then to like enslave it or capture it. Yeah.
Should we carry on?
Yes, carry on.
I was just going to ask you actually a bit about language,
Yes.
etymology of words, and we've had some very excellent crossword.
We have had
crossword
crosswords.
times at lunch.
Yes.
But you do, when I'm just looking at the titles, so they're, I'm going to do bad French now.
Go on.
Get ready. Quatrain Coud, Eco?
Icor is Greek, I think. So
Okay.
I don't know how. I'm not going to attempt.
Stolon, clavicle, tarsus, fissure, spleen, blench, cuisse. You know,
Yes.
they've got these very particular bodily words.
Yeah.
But I just, it's kind of, I just wondered whether you could sort of talk through how those titles come about. I mean, whether they're specifically referencing the forms that you're making, whether you're thinking about, because you also often talk about the sculptures as she's,
Yeah.
as female.
Yes.
You know, and where,
This is my baby she's.
like when the titles come, I suppose is what I was interested in. Are they there as it's made, or they're there before?
So I feel like for this show, because we were building it all here, I had like a big sketchbook that I was just like kind of freeform drawing like those shapes that I'd kind of been thinking about, and then I guess some of them started to look more like body parts, so I started assigning like words that kind of looked like the object around them, because I really love vocabulary and words, and I think there's so many amazing words that don't get used. But then also like looking into the etymologies of those words, specifically those titles, and realizing that we share quite a lot of like the anatomy that we like use on ourselves to describe like tarsus, for example, is like the group of 7 bones that like form part of the ankle, and like clavicle, which is like this part of the shoulder. Like they also get used a lot in like geography, and like that geological like vocabulary is really, I just feel like that tension is really nice, like how we've maybe like how we sort of like began language in a sense, like was so related to like the geological world, and like just like being outside in landscapes and kind of bringing them into like finding these words that are very specific and like mean very specific things and attaching them to the sculptures. It's like the first time I've actually titled sculptures as well,
really?
because I normally don't. Like I normally title drawings, and like normally the exhibitions that I've made in the past have just been like everything is called that like work. So yeah, I think also like what I really liked about those words was that they also sound like giants' names in mythology as well. So like kind of this play with like Blanche sounds like a giant, but that's not what it means. Like, and it's quite interesting how, I guess those vocabularies kind of like tie in together, which is why there's a glossary at the beginning, because we love being a nerd. We just love it.
Oh, why not? Okay, let's carry on exploring.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, sure. So we're going through the maze right now.
yeah.
I'm hoping we're going through it.
So we're just going to kind of maybe have a glimpse into that one.
Yeah. Sure.
So the other thing I was going to ask you about is the vessels.
Yes.
So there in this exhibition there are the giants, there are the arrows, there are the vessels, there are the dates, there are the clouts, just kind of nails.
Yeah.
What talk a bit about the vessels and kind of where they fit for you.
I think that like whenever I'm really interested in like the kind of process of archaeology specifically, and when we think of archaeology we always think about pots and we think about shards and we think about fragments, and when we think about history, like it's always defined by these vessels that like we think of like Grecian pots, we think of like these big urns, and just I think like I started making sculpture through clay, and I feel like having these smaller objects which are kind of like at a human size as well, like kind of help to break the work up a little bit and like to give them like, I don't know, maybe like a bit more depth or a bit more of like a story in a way, or like a narrative, like and thinking about the ways that these objects would have been used. So often when these kind of objects or these vessels or jugs are like excavated, like they'll either be broken, they'll be like reconstituted and put back together, but we'd never really know what the function of them were. So like people in the past might have just used them and they might have just been trash. They might have been like like the kind of waste products that we kind of create and like accumulate and like throw away. And the fact that we've like taken these out of the ground and then made them like have a value specifically, I think is really interesting. So I guess like having these objects which look like they're very valuable, but they're made out of like air dry clay, they're made out of like, they're not made out of like fired ceramics, they're very like friable. They're very like brittle and fragile in a sense. Like having that kind of relationship where they look like they could be these objects that are very valuable, that like have these histories, but actually like they're just made like to replicate these things that like have histories to them. But I mean, I listened to Lord of the Rings audiobook a lot while making them, which has been really good.
I mean, maybe we'll just. I feel like we shouldn't go into every room, because actually people need to come and see it, because you can't experience it. Maybe we should just kind of finish by
the big ones,
by the big beasts.
The big beasts.
So, I mean, this is the biggest sculpture you've ever made?
Yes. Well, the boat that I made for the Tetley was really big, but this is like the first full sculpture I've ever made.
And this
This one is called Bis, which means thigh, and it also means the metal plate that like knights would have used to pad their like upper leg in battle. But I just kind of wanted to make a big thigh.
Yeah, because I remember when we were talking about before the show was made, the idea of things that would kind of appear over the top of the maze.
Yeah.
And these things that are so huge that the maze is kind of containing them, but actually you can see them.
Yeah.
From elsewhere. It's kind of really key, isn't it?
Definitely.
Put these two together and kind of just have a really interesting leg-based, I would say leg-based, maybe arm-based.
Yeah.
A kind of bodily conversation with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of also wanted to make them like as ambiguous as possible. So like in my head, I'm like they're like these forums, but I also feel like Sean was in earlier and he said that it looked like a whale, and I was like, sick, cool, like that's cool. Like I like that you can read lots of different things into them, and that's kind of nice in terms of like narrative building or story building, that you can kind of just come in and do it yourself. They don't have to be like prescribed. There are like forms which are like more obviously like this one kind of is like obviously like a book. or it could be like a part of like a bone shank or something. But yeah,
It
mostly.
could equally be a fragment of something and it's just lost. It's lost. I guess that's the what you were talking about earlier on about the pots.
Yeah.
That actually, when you go and look at fragmentary things, you might anthropomorphise them instinctively, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that that's what it was.
For sure, yeah. And I feel like also like part of the process, which I feel you have been, everybody's been very like immersed in, and this is like the first time that I'm not wearing like disgusting clothes. Like I feel like we've polished the turd a little bit, but it's quite like a lot of my practice is also about like breakage and like things that break and allowing things to something we tried to put a sculpture up and it broke, and I think actually like allowing things to take their own form kind of almost makes them a bit more like archaeological, or like allowing these objects that like might be situated in the past to also just like not be situated in the past, to like be like non-static, which is kind of nice. Which I've quite enjoyed.
Cool.
So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, people should come and see the show, obviously, because come to Birmingham.
Birmingham's great.
Yeah, Birmingham's very excellent. Everyone should move here.
Home of Black Sabbath.
Home of Black Sabbath and many other things.
Yes.
So the show opens this evening 6 till 8, and then is on until the middle of April. If you go on our website, you'll find details of a couple of events. So you're in conversation with Laurent.
Yes.
And then also there's a making event towards the end of the show. So there's lots of things to get involved in. Yeah. You enjoyed?
It's been incredible. No, it's been terrible. I hated every moment. No, it's been like actually amazing, and like I'm quite terrified of like returning back to where I live and being like sad.
Just no longer with
we're not like just in production mode.
Because it has been a mission, and I think just also it'd be nice to say thanks to all the people that helped. So Susie, we had a whole bunch of students from Birmingham City University who were brilliant. Dinosaur, Jazz, Jabal,
Mia, Ella, Rasham, Diana, like thank you so much. To you guys as well, like thank you so much. Like everyone here like has been incredible, and like thank you very much for like holding me in this mad build where I feel like it's been very messy.
It's been good.
It's been good. It's been really fun.
Yeah, and look at what we've got at the end.
I know. And it's like good. I know. I even got my nails done today.
Yeah.
Which is like they were disgusting.
Yeah, but that was the aim. Get your nails done.
Get the nails done
before the opening, and we did it.
Sweet.
Cool. Brilliant. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
And
goodbye.
Come and see. Bye.
Farewell.